All right. Good morning, DLC group, brokers, lenders, partners. Really appreciate you being here today. My name is Gary Morris, and I'm the host of the DLC Level Up program. Today is February 17th, 2022, and I am extraordinarily happy to be with you today and introduce our guest today. To those of you in the West, good morning. To those of you in the East, good afternoon. My guest today is Lisa Lisson, President, FedEx Express Canada. I'm going to quickly go through her bio. As the president of FedEx Express Canada, Lisa Lisson has risen from an associate marketing specialist to one of Canada's most powerful and influential transportation executives. As the leader of over 12,000 employees across 64 locations, Lisa has helped build FedEx Express Canada into the most reliable courier network in the country. Lisa has become a renowned public speaker in Canada and the United States for her revealing discussions about becoming the first woman and the first Canadian president in FedEx Canada history. The sudden passing of her husband at a young age, raising their 4 children as a single mother while building a successful career, has enabled Lisa to acquire many insights and advice that she shares with all of her audience with openness and frankness. Lisa is an inductee to the Women's Executive Network Hall of Fame as one of Canada's most powerful women. Lisa is passionate about access to quality healthcare for all children and currently sits on the board of SickKids Foundation and SickKids Hospital. She is also the best-selling author of Resilience, which I'll show you in just a minute. It's a story about navigating life, loss, and the road to success. Lisa also starred in the award-winning TV show Undercover Boss and is a best-selling author of a memoir called Resilience. Interesting fact, when she did Undercover Boss, she actually won, her and the producer actually won the Canadian Emmy for their episode. Please help me welcome Miss Lisa Lisson. Lisa, good afternoon.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. And Gary, thanks so much for having me.
You know, Lisa, we're really excited about having you. I mean, in the brief time that you and I have had a chance to just start to get to know each other, I find myself just pinching myself. I mean, you are such a fascinating individual. We're going to talk today about, a lot of your history. And obviously, the book that we are referring to is this book, Resilience. For all of you that are on this call, like we normally do, we're going to give away at least 50 copies. David is going to put up the hashtag. There it is, hashtag Resilience. Please, guys, social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, please make posts and comments. If you have questions, like always, please put those comments or questions in the question box, and we will absolutely get to them. So, Lisa, as I sort of read your book and as I started doing my homework on this, it was extraordinary to me that, you navigated yourself from an entry-level position up to the president of FedEx Canada. But on top of that, I think what really fascinated me is the resilience that you needed to get to where you are today. This part of the story that's so impressive isn't the fact that you became the president of FedEx Canada. It's what you had to endure to get there. So I want to start with the early part of your life, the first kind of 5 years, when you finished university, 21 to 26 years old. In the space of 5 years, you went from graduating university, landing your dream job, marrying your high school sweetheart, buying your first home together, wondering whether your kid brother would emerge from a coma, winning a major promotion at work, and burying 3 people who were incredibly close to you. And that was, of course, your husband, Pat's mother, your father, and he was only 47 years old. And then again, your best friend's sister. That in itself is extraordinary and is more loss than most people, often have to go through in a lifetime. What's even more extraordinary, right, and contributes to your resiliency and what has made you who you are today is that 12 years later, at 38 years old, your husband, Patrick, in the middle of the night, wasn't in bed. You found him on the floor. He had a major heart attack. He was on, support. I don't know if it was life support in a vegetative state.
Yeah.
For 2 years. And 2 years later, you buried your husband, Patrick. So I want to start right there. Maybe just, give us some feedback on sort of, that heartache and that pain that you've gone through, because it is extraordinary that you've been able to achieve what you've achieved.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Gary. And again, thank you so much for having me today, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here. And, I learned at a very young age last university, when my father got diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is brain cancer. less than 1% of the population gets brain cancer. My dad did on my last university, and his goal was to make it to my grad, and he passed away about a week prior. So I learned at a very young age that how short life is, and how, we all share many common things on this planet, but one of the things we all share is none of us know what tomorrow brings. And I really learned at that very young age when he passed away, just how short life was. And I started asking, why him, why me? And I realized at a very young age that I wasn't going to get those answers. So how I dealt with my grieving at a young age was, what can I learn from this to become stronger? And then I met my husband, Patrick. We're high school sweethearts. We met when we were in grade 9 and went all through high school. There we are, all through high school and all through university together. And we finished university, and then we got engaged. And within 2 months after us getting engaged in the fall, his mother, guess what, gets glioblastoma. The same thing my dad had. So now the roles are reversed, and we're supposed to get married in the spring, but I really wanted her to dance with Patrick, my husband. So we got married in January. Most people in Canada don't get married in January because you're hoping not to have a snowstorm. And then, we get married, and she made it to our wedding and danced with him. And then, unfortunately, she passed away about 6 months, really, with brain cancer. Unfortunately, I become an expert at that. And then shortly after that, my best friend's sister, she was in an abusive relationship, and my best friend asked me to help kind of pull her out of there one night, which we did, and moved her out in the middle of the night kind of thing. And we said to her, look, don't you go back. Don't you go back. And she went back, and he happened to be there, and he took her life and then his. And then on top of that, so I had done my father's eulogy, and then the family asked me to do Elaine's eulogy. And then, after that, I thought, my goodness, I've had my father, my mother-in-law, my best friend. And I said to Patrick, whoa, we're certainly learning a lot about life, how fragile it is, and how it's such a gift each day we get. And then Patrick and I are, rising in our careers. We have 4 children. And I always tell all the women and men, that's my oldest daughter, Haley, that you can have a career, ladies. You can have as many kids as you want. I have 4. And I was, Patrick and I our careers were taking off. I started off entry-level FedEx out of school, and life was good. Our kids were 9, 7, 5, and 3. And we came back from a cottage rental, and in the middle of the night, as Gary said, I hear a thump. And as moms with bionic hearing, I realized that thump came from inside the room. Turned the light on, and there was Patrick on the floor. So I quickly did CPR, phoned 911, and they brought him down to our local hospital. And after many, many hours, the doctor said to me, he's had a massive heart attack, and we don't think he is going to, we've got him recovered, but we don't think he's going to pull out. He's pretty much in a vegetative state at this point. And I asked, so they were telling me to let him go. And I don't know what came over me, but I asked this very profound question. I asked one question. I said, do miracles happen in this hospital? And this team of doctors said, miracles happen every single day. And I said, you know what? He's 38 years old. He's my high school sweetheart. My kids are 9, 7, 5, and 3. So I need you to hook him up to whatever you need to hook him up to. And I need to know if I'm going to get my miracle. And I spent 2 years. At the time, I was a vice president of FedEx. And I spent 2 years trying to make sure I did a good job as a vice president of FedEx, trying to raise my 4 kids, and also taking care of him, because to see him, he looked fine, but he was in a vegetative state. And after the 2 years, I came to realize that I wasn't going to get my miracle, and it was time to let him go. And then a year, Gary, after that, almost to the day, I get a call from Memphis, and it's our CEO of the world, and he said, it's not often the CEO of the world's calling me, so I'm going into shock. And I said, yes, Mike. And he said, congratulations. And I said, well, for what? And he said, you're now going to be the first Canadian and the first president to ever run Canada, or first female to ever run a division of FedEx. And Gary, I went into complete shock, and I'm like, aren't you going to interview me? I mean, here he is offering me the job. And I'll tell you, no man would have said, I'm like, this is a lot about women. We're questioning ourselves too much. And I'm like, aren't you going to interview me? And he's like, you've been interviewing for 18 years, which is how long I've been with FedEx. And here I am today talking to you and all this wonderful people that have joined today. And I've been in this position now, Gary, for 11 years, which is my favorite number, by the way.
Yeah, I remember reading in the book when you asked that question, do miracles happen in this hospital, and just getting absolute goosebumps. Such an incredible question. So then tell me, when you go through despair like that and you have, that kind of news, it must be almost impossible to dig yourself out of that hole and not fall into that, that victim mentality. In your book, you talk about attitude is a crucial variable.
Yeah.
Maybe just talk to us about the attitude that you had to take on in order to get through those very difficult times.
Absolutely. So I will tell you, like after Patrick passed away, because I really thought I was going to get my miracle. I'm the most optimistic person on the planet because I think being optimistic helps to reduce your stress, helps to reduce anxiety. Being optimistic about things that you want in life, even though if you don't know how it's going to happen yet. I'm a huge believer in visualization as well, and writing down goals, which if we get to, I'll share some of my tips there. But right after he passed away, I was like, I have to figure out how I'm going to get through this because, he was the love of my life, and I've got these kids, and I didn't know how I was going to get through it. And so it was my sweet mom actually that started me on my journey about resilience. And she said to me, she grabbed my hand right after he passed away. And I was obviously struggling for the first few months. I was like, it was a miracle for me to, get up and put some lipstick on me. That was extraordinary. But she grabbed my hand, Gary, and she said, Lisa, she goes, you have to remember this. She said, life is not about what happens to you. It's about what you choose to do with what happens. And even though right now you feel completely paralyzed in your life, just always remember you do have control when things happen to you like this. The control that you have is how you respond to the situation. And those words, when she said that to me, gave me some control of the uncontrollable, meaning although I could not bring Patrick back, I could control how I responded to it. And that set me on a path to, I'm going to figure out how I can get through this stronger than when I started. And that really got me researching and looking into the word resilience. And if you look at the word resilience and what it is defined, is getting through a hardship. It can be either personal or it can be professional, but getting through a hardship and coming out just as strong, or if not stronger, than when you started. And I said, I need to figure out this resilience. And so I started researching, because I always thought these successful people, Gary, that overcame these odds or overcame tragedy, I always thought they had something special. I thought they were born that way.
Right.
But what I came to discover through my research on resilience is that it's not a gene. It's not something that you have to be born with. What it is what I've learned is that we all have a resilience muscle that we can strengthen. And we can strengthen if we choose to do so. And that really encouraged me to figure out how I'm going to get through this stronger. And I'll just share a couple of things that help me.
Please.
One of the first things that I learned that resilient people do is they focus on the here and now. They don't look back, because we're not going that way. You look back for life lessons, and they don't let their minds wander to the future. I read this great quote by Joyce Meyer that said, worrying about the future is like putting a down payment on a problem you may never have. So resilient people live in 24-hour increments, because none of us know what tomorrow brings. Resilient people realize that their attitude in life is their calling card. And when we wake up every single morning, we can choose our attitude like we choose our clothing. So at first, when I was waking up saying, I can't get through this, I don't know how I'm going to do this, I can't do my job, I was quitting before I even started trying. So I started to change my attitude to say, I've got this. I'm going to be the best mom and dad ever. I'm going to still go on my path to try and be the first Canadian president. And I kept telling myself that, Gary, even though I had no idea how it was going to happen yet, but I kept telling myself and believing that I was going to be the best mom, the best person in the job, even though I had this hardship. So resilient people realize their attitude is their calling card. It's how you show up. It tells people what to expect from you, and we can choose it like our clothing. Focus on positive thoughts, living in the here and now. And the last point I'll make, what resilient people do, Gary, that they live with gratitude.
Absolutely.
So for me, I rather than me focusing on the loss of Patrick's life, he could have been driving me in the car when he had his heart attack. He could be driving with our 4 kids when he's had his heart attack. So as tragic as his life loss was, I focused on those years I had with him and our 4 beautiful babies, because I mentor a lot of men and women, widows, who never had a chance to have a baby with their partner before they passed away. So gratitude is huge in strengthening that result. Focus on what you have, but all too often, Gary, we want to focus on what's missing, and that is not a way to live our lives.
Yeah, so powerful. It's interesting. It sounds to me like you had some very powerful women in your life growing up. Obviously, your mom, drilled into your head, "You're in charge of you. You're in charge of you," was a quote that you put in the book. And then, of course, your great grandma was your guiding light. And very, very, you said in the book that you grew up in a household from your mom where she said you can do anything you want, anything you want. She just absolutely drove that into your head.
Oh, there she is. There's my mom and dad.
Drove that into your mind. Maybe talk about that, like how important it is. I mean, there's a lot of, people on the show today that have the children at home that, would love to hear sort of like what you were, experiencing in your household from your mom and great grandma. I think that was very instrumental in probably some of the resiliency that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I pass this on to my kids. So what my great grandma was, I was very close to. My grandma, she passed away younger. And my mom is that, for example, this is one simple example, Gary, but I'll tell you. So when I got a call to interview for the entry level at FedEx, okay, I went into shock. And then my great grandma and my mom were in the kitchen when I hung up the phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they want to interview me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I'm going to do well. And I all of a sudden started quitting before I even started trying. And they both looked at me and said, stop. Why do you think you're going to bomb the interview? If you think you're going to bomb that interview, you're just putting it out there and you're going to make it happen.
Right.
So you take that back, because words matter. Words matter what we say. And one of the things that they both told me in that profound moment, and early on too, but it's that the most important conversation, this is what they instilled in me and I instill in my 4 children. The most important conversation we have in life is with ourselves. Okay. Think about that inner voice, that talk track. And for some reason, that talk track, Gary, wants to go to the negative side. Like when my daughter's a perfect example, she just interviewed a month ago for her dream job, and she did the same thing. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, they want to interview me," and she's like, "I don't know, I'm going to bomb this." I said, "Stop it right there." So I would say the most profound thing that my mom and grandmother instilled in me is how important that inner voice is. And so if you say, "I am never going to find my life partner, I'm never going to get married," you're declaring that to be true. And then you're going to start to act and behave like that's never going to happen, as opposed to saying, there's a perfect example, okay? I still have not, dated. My husband's been gone a long time, but I don't say, I'll never find love again or I'll never get married again. I'm just saying he hasn't found me yet because the timing is not right. You see the difference? And so that is probably, I would say, the most profound thing that I grew up in, about you can do this, you can do that. Don't use the word can't. Don't use the word I'm not able. And that really was instilled in me. And I needed that before all of these tragedies happened in my life, which was profound. And like I said, I instilled that on my kids. So, when Chloe was going down, I go, hang on. I go, take that back. That's a little thing in the house. And I go, take that back. She's like, okay, Mom, I've got this. I said, yes, you do.
Sorry, Lisa, I'm just, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I just had an audio problem. I had to quickly change offices. I lost all power on my computer. So,
oh, no.
I know you just finished up your comment, but I
literally just finished and you popped back. So that worked out well.
My amazing assistant, Tara, solved the problem for me in 2 seconds, and I'm now sitting
there
in her
you go.
office. And, super happy. So, just sort of going back to that a little bit, let's sort of use some of those lessons that you just shared and how we can empower our children. And let's talk about sort of women in the workforce. In your book, you talk about it's extraordinary, amazing that 40% of the workforce, is made up from the females, but yet only 3% of CEOs, are female. And I want to read a bit of an excerpt from your book because I think it was very powerful. It said, "I know of women who complain bitterly that they can't advance beyond a certain level in their careers, even though they are just as qualified as men and sometimes more qualified. No matter how hard they try, they can't break into that boys' club. I understand those women's frustrations, but I don't share them." Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I'm a huge believer in networking, and I think it's so important, networking and mentoring. And I wouldn't be where I am today without my mentors and without the network and my sponsors. But so I would go to, when I was VP as an example, and even when I became president, I would go to a lot of networking events, and I would hear women say that, I would say to them, if you're a VP or a senior VP or an EVP, whatever, what's your next move? And they're like, well, I'd love to be president, but that'll never happen. And I'm like, why not? They go, I can't break into that boys' club. And I would say to them, it goes back to almost like what I was just talking about early on about that inner voice. So I would say to them, well, have you let your intentions be known? Because that's the other thing that's very important. Like, if you want to achieve something in life, no matter what it is, personally or professionally, let your intentions be known. Talk about it with others. You never know how someone could help you. And so I said to this woman that's already quit before she's like, I'll never break. I go, have you let your intentions be known? I certainly did. Did you walk in there and say, I want to be the next president. I need to help me figure out what I need to do to get there. Have you done that? This actually is a really good story. She's like, I have not. And I said, well, you need to start doing that. And you need to ask for feedback, ask what you need to be working on. Let those intentions be known. And Gary, honestly, she got the job. But she just assumed that she could never break through. And so that is just one example of many where I see it. And I mentor a lot of women, and a lot of them, I just had a call yesterday with one, and she is a senior VP, and there's just 3 men that are EVPs. And she's like, I don't think I'll ever get there. And I'm like, let's work on a plan. Why are you quitting before you even started trying? Yeah. So I'm not saying that the only 3% of women CEOs is because they're quitting before they're trying. I think there for sure is a glass ceiling out there, but I think that more women could break through it with being stronger, letting their intentions be known. And here's another interesting thing that I've done a lot of research on women and leadership, et cetera. But you guys might have heard of this, but a man will go for a promotion when he is 60% ready. But you know what, women? We've got to wait till we're 110% ready, that we've dotted every I, crossed every T. We got to stop doing that. So I mentor a lot of women. I say, look, if you feel like you're 60% ready to go, they'll ask me, should I go for this promotion? Well, I don't feel like I'm ready. Well, why don't you feel you're ready? And all the reasons I don't like, you sound ready to me, because those sound like excuses. Yeah. So I think if more women went for promotions or let their intentions be known, when they're 60% ready, they will be surprised because they're going to get it through focus, through determination, and through effort, and through believing in themselves, which is huge. If you cannot believe in yourself, why would you expect anyone else to?
Yeah, and you actually demonstrated that yourself. I know the first time that you applied for the president's position at FedEx Canada, you were actually turned down. They said you weren't ready, but you went there. You had the experience. You put your face in front of them. They got to know you, that you had the intent or the interest to be there, and then it made your second, sort of attempt that much more successful.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly right. I threw my name. I knew I was, like, I shouldn't say I knew I was going to get it because I was believing I would, but I'd only been I think I'd only been a VP for like a couple of years. So it was a bit of a long shot, but I was like, you know what? I'm throwing my name in the ring, and they're going to find out who Lisa Lisson is. And I went in there believing I was going to get it for sure. And I, prepped and whatever, but they told me I wasn't quite ready, which is fine. But here's the other thing too, when you're in a company, or how you react to bad news is very, very important in life, both personally and professionally. So yeah, was I upset? 100%, but I always say this, never carry a bad day forward. Don't ever do that. Don't carry a bad. So I was upset. I had my one day of like, okay, I didn't get it. The next day I'm back at work. Okay, let's go. And the new president, I'm like, I'm going to be your right-hand person. Let's do this, whatever. But so many people carry a bad day forward to make it the next day, and it turns into a bad week, a bad month. You can't do that. And that's what I tell my kids too. So so it was devastating for sure. And then, you heard the story at the beginning of this chat where the next time I got the call and and they're like, I'm going to interview me. So, but if I had reacted really badly, like came in with a chip on my shoulder, or I would not be sitting here talking to you today. And I see so many people that don't get a promotion, or they don't get this job, or they don't get that big sale. And they live in it for weeks. And then if that just cascades to every other aspect of their life. Absolutely. So that's very important. Don't carry a bad day forward.
Yeah, often people carry it, and sometimes for years, right? I mean, they
years.
They carry it for years, and it just damages all the joy in their life.
Absolutely.
And, the other thing that you talk about in your book, which I thought was really interesting, it's funny, I have a sign on my wall, and I put it in there the day we started this company. It's 3 letters, YES, right? Yes. And for me, it was always be open to opportunities. Always say yes. Always have a look at it. Always give yourself the opportunity. Well, you explained it in your book very similar, but you said you talk about always making and taking the lateral move. And of course, we've heard so many people say, "Oh my God, that's a lateral move. You don't want to take that move." And you talk about taking those lateral moves and how
absolutely
that has been. Can you just drill down on that for us?
Absolutely. So I get this from my mentors. What so many mentors have told me is it's so important in life, okay, both personally and professionally, to get out of that comfort zone. And you probably have all heard this saying, which is, rarely does anything great happen in your comfort zone. So one of my mentors said, when I approached them, I said, look, I am VP of marketing and sales as one example. I'll actually give you an earlier example. I was a manager of advertising and promotion, and the manager of pricing and product and analytical came up. I am more of, you can tell I talk with my hands. I'm more on the creative side, less analytical. But I said to my mentor, this job's come up, but I don't really know a lot about the analytics. And they're like, you got to go for it. Because if you want to be a director, you got to do that. You need to learn every aspect of that to get you ready. Great advice. So I moved over there and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, but I forced myself to learn. And I'm glad I did, because it really got me out of my comfort zone. And the same thing when I was the vice president of marketing and they gave me sales. I'm like, are you crazy? I've never sold anything in my life. I feel sorry for salespeople. I never negotiate. I'm like, I want to get paid. I'm a terrible salesperson, but they're like, you're going to do sales. So I left when they told me you're getting sales. And I went to, chapters or whatever, and I got like sales for dummies, sales 101, sales this, and what. Knowledge is power. And when we're thrown into uncomfortable or new situations, I tell everyone so much: research and learn. So number one, Gary, absolutely get out of your comfort zone, take those lateral moves, do things that do things that make you uncomfortable, because you learn and grow. And in that uncomfort is when you go out and research. I tell my kids all the time, is like, Google's my best friend. And I'm not joking. Like, I'm on there all the time researching, like, how to do this, how to do that. Like, there's so much wealth of information that can help us in uncomfortable situations. And and I honestly, if I didn't make all these lateral moves, and I did a whole bunch more, I took on automation. Like, before I got this job, I took on customer service. I took on our clearance operation, and all the other VPs were like, what, are you crazy? But if I didn't do that, Gary, honestly, it wouldn't have got me ready for the job that I'm in right now.
Yeah, no kidding. It just absolutely, what a journey. So let's maybe talk about mentorship, and we'll get into leadership here in a minute and some other items. But, you've said in your book, you've had so many mentors over the years, and you said all of your mentors had one thing in common. They all believed in their own success. Yes. I'd love to hear about sort of some of your mentors, and then maybe talk to our audience about, the importance of mentors and how they can go about asking and finding a mentor.
Absolutely. So like I said, I would not be in this position without my mentors, for sure. And, when I first got the entry level, it was my mom who said, try and get some people to help you grow. Like, you obviously want to be a manager, so why don't you go find some manager mentors? And I'm like, Mom, that's such a good idea. And so what I did, after I'd been an individual contributor for a couple of years, I went out and I asked the manager of finance, the manager of engineering. I said, hey, can I buy you a coffee in the cafeteria? I would love just to pick your brain for 30 minutes And I would love to know, what are the 3 things that you did to get you ready to be a manager? And I'll tell you what, Gary, people love talking about themselves. So they said, absolutely, yeah. So they would tell me, here are the 3 things I did. So I took those 3 things from this manager. I took those 3 things from this manager. I was basically asking them for their career playbook. Give me your career playbook. And they're happy to share it. And then I took all the things that I felt would play to my strengths, and I used that to create my own career playbook. And that got me to, and I did it when I was a manager, then when I was a director, then when I became a VP, and when I became a vice president, I asked for 30 minutes of time with the other presidents. How did you get to be the president of a region? What did you do? So ask people for your career playbook. And so that's one thing. Go out and ask people that you admire. I always say this: surround yourself with people, places, and things that inspire you. Gary, you said you had. I've got signs. I've got a really good one here I want to read beside my desk whenever we're having a low moment, because we all have low moments. We can't be chipper all the time. I've got one right here that I'll read that picks me up. But so my mentors had said to me, it's absolutely important that you continue to build that relationship beyond just the one, can I have a coffee? And so here's what I did to get mentors on a more ongoing basis beyond just the coffee, because you need people to bounce things off of. So what I would do is I would go up to people that I really admired, and I would say, listen, could I steal 30 minutes of your time just once a month, conference call, whatever, now we can do Zoom. And I just want to have you as a mentor. I will send you my 2 or 3 questions in advance. And would you mind doing this for just 6 months? Or sometimes people do it for 12. And because I want to learn from you. And it gives people an opportunity, right, to pay it forward, right? So that's what I would do. And for those that say, you know what, I'm so busy, I don't have time to take you on. But I say, okay, can we do lunch or a coffee? And so I tell people, a lot of people, if you want someone to mentor you for 3 months or 6 months, do that. Just approach them and say, I admire you. Would you mind giving me 30 minutes once a month? I really want to understand your career playbook, and you'll find most people will say yes. But if they don't, you ask them for that coffee and don't be shy. I have learned so much from my mentors. Honestly, I would not be here today if it weren't for them and all the great advice that they gave me to get to this position, but also what they still are giving me. And I rely upon them heavily. Like Mike, who's the gentleman that gave me this position, he's retired. I still will text him and ask him questions, career or personal or whatever, to this day, because, we have to rely on others and their strength and their knowledge, especially when we're down or having difficult times. It helps to talk it out with people and to get their advice and insight to get through it. So if you don't have, I was telling, if your audience right now, Gary, if you just don't have mentors or people you can lean on, try and create that network of people, because you'll be surprised how powerful it truly can be.
And it's absolutely amazing too. I mean, I'm constantly mentoring people. I have, 3 young kids now below the age of 21 that I'm mentoring, off and on. And I do a new broker, session, and I've mentored so many over the years. And, it's as good for me as it is for them, because it keeps me youthful again. It brings me back to it. It reminds me that some of the things I'm teaching them, maybe I've stopped doing them myself. So I've slid a little bit. Exactly. Brings my game up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always, when we talked a couple of days ago, I had a mentor session with someone just prior to us talking. And when I'm helping her solve a career situation and giving her advice, when she hangs up the phone or we're on Zoom and she's energized, I am just as energized, because I realized some of the things I was telling her, I'm like, hey, you know what? I got to remind myself to do some of those things, so it's a good refresher for us too, Gary.
Yeah, no, absolutely is. So maybe let's talk about personal development. I mean, I'm a firm believer in personal development. I don't care if it's, an audio book, if it's, watching a speaker on YouTube, if it's attending a session or a speaker. What does Lisa Lisson do for personal development? I mean, you're obviously busy. I just want to let everybody know, just today, 4 kids at home, 2 extra kids at home, 5 dogs, 3 rescue bunnies, right? Yeah. Sits on 2 boards. And again, is the president.
Oh, there they are. Look at
FedEx Canada. That's your household today, right there.
That is pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So I know you're a busy lady, but talk to us about what you do for your personal development. How do you keep your fire lit?
Yeah. So a couple things is that number one, as I mentioned, I think it's so important to surround yourself with people, places, and things that inspire you, which is very important. So for me, I get my personal development for sure from my mentors or just from my network, from people that I admire, which is so important. I'm a constant. I will I will read, like, I know people ask me what's your favorite book. I actually don't have one. Gary, knowledge is power. So I'm a constant reader. Like, I was just doing a Zoom session, and this gentleman was just talking about this book about how we can fall in different categories as human beings. I thought, he's like, I'm sending you this book and it's on its way. So knowledge is power. So for me, how I get my inspiration, my motivation, my drive is that I am constantly reading. I'll read anything, whether it's business strategy, personal development. And I, like I said, I think knowledge is power. And a lot of times I mentioned earlier on too about Google, like if I'm having, a moment, like I said, none of us, it's okay to have down days, and you have to give yourself permission to down days. Like, right. None of us are perfect, and none of us can be like positive think all the time. Those down days make those good days feel better. But I always say, don't carry a bad day forward. So if I'm having a bad day or struggling with something, I will actually go, and I've got a lot of calendars that have this little, and even on my phone right beside me, as I mentioned, I've got all these little motivational things here in the office or around my house I will go to and read. And it just, it relaxes me. Look at, there it is. That's one of the things for my mom. And I've got this actually in my house with my kids. And I'll just share real quick, Gary, if I grab this. So
yeah, please.
I've got this saying is right beside me on my desk. I'm going to read it to you. So remember, I'm having a moment. What it says, there is no medicine like hope, no incentive so great, and no tonic so powerful as expectation of something better tomorrow. And this sits beside my desk. And whenever I'm having a bad day, I realize it's just a bad day. It's not a bad week or year. And the last thing I will say too, and I am a huge believer in quiet time and creating white space on our calendar, both personally and professionally. So what I always do, I carve out 3 or 4 or 5 hours at work where I'm not in a meeting, I'm not in a Zoom, where I pause and I reflect and I just breathe and I look and say, okay, how am I doing? How are things like? And I would not be able to function without that white space on my calendar, not only professionally, but the white space on my calendar personally, where I will carve out 5, 6, 7 chunks of time, whether I'm meeting a friend for coffee, doing hot yoga, going to the gym, even though I hate it. I always tell people I only run if someone's chasing me, but I know how good it is to go to the gym. So for me, that's also, and I wake up every morning and I'll have a 10-minute meditation where I wake up every morning and I focus on what am I grateful for in my life. I start my mornings with gratitude and that meditation, and I end with what am I grateful for from today. Like when I go to bed tonight, I have my quiet time, my white space on my calendar. I will mention that I'm grateful that I had this opportunity to be able to share my story, to help. I always say, if I can just help one person by sharing my story that's struggling, personally, professionally, to let them know you can get through things, you can strengthen that resilience muscle. And it all comes down to your thoughts, your mind, how you think. And, so many people don't realize that, we spend so much time on the food we put in our bodies and exercise, but how often do you spend time on your mind and having quiet time and focusing on that inner voice and focusing on the thoughts you're allowing in your head? So as you see, Gary, I don't get my energy that's from one thing. It's from many things in my life that help me, be the best person I can possibly be for my kids, for my family, and for my incredible team here at FedEx.
Yeah, it's funny because I've said over the years, ever want anything really important to be done, ask a busy woman, right? And I mean, you are the absolute epitome and example of that. I think there's a lot of people on this program right now that are just saying, like, this is absolutely incredible, because I mean, you have a very large household. You have, you sit on boards, you do all kinds of stuff, and yet you still find time. 2 things that you said, and it's funny, I want to get your opinion on them because I feel much the same way. I often get asked, Gary, if you could give a piece of advice or just a couple of things that would get me started, or things that were the foundation, to sort of your position today, or building this company, what would they be? And I always say, number one, just start, right? Like, just, don't put it off next week, next day, like start right now, start this hour. Right. And you're not going to be ready. People want to build the perfect race car before they put it on the road. They want to, as you said earlier, they want everything to be ready. They want the perfect, time in their life to be able to start something. And that is absolutely, craziness, and it sets you back. And the second thing that I always say is be grateful, right? Show your gratitude. The more you're grateful, people are very appreciative. The people who are grateful, they open doors, they make introductions, they go the extra mile for you. And you've, mentioned both of those, things today. Maybe just touch bases on the importance of gratitude, and, maybe where it's helped you.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, it was huge in helping me really strengthen my resilience muscle. And it really helped me get through some of the really tough parts of my grieving journey. And one thing I will say about grieving, for anyone that has lost someone, whether a partner, what I've come to learn, which I think is very important, is that there is no end to grieving. So I would always say to myself, Gary, well, next year I'll be done grieving, or next year I'll be done. There is no end to grieving, and that's okay, because we never stop loving. And so once I started to realize that grieving never ends, and that it's not a bad thing, and that, again, it ties to the gratitude point. So, I kept saying, like, hey, this year for his birthday, I'm not going to cry. And I'm like, well, why not cry? Because how lucky were you to be able to spend as many birthdays as you did? So gratitude for me is really, so the grieving, in a way, it's like the grieving, as painful as it was, and it still some days is on the special occasions, but I turn it into gratitude to say, I would rather have had those years where I had him from, 14 till we were 38 and having our beautiful babies, and experience that love, than to never have experienced that at all. And so that's how I can, being grateful can take a painful situation and turn it positive by focusing, okay, that has happened, but what are you grateful for here and now? So it's hugely profound in my life. Like I said, I start out every morning, like, first of all, every morning, I'll tell you the first thing I say. I said, I'm grateful my eyes open. And I talk about that to a lot of people, is that the first thing you should say in the morning is that how grateful and lucky we are that our eyes open, because how many people wish their eyes open today? And a lot of times too, Gary, one thing with gratitude is that I find sometimes, you guys heard this saying, don't sweat the small stuff. But I find sometimes is so many people get so bent out of shape about insignificant things in their lives. They carry it forward to the week that, and I always say to people, hang on a second, pull the camera back in your life. In the whole scheme of your life that you're absolutely losing your mind on right now for a solid week, how important is this in the whole scheme of your life?
Right.
And they kind of look at me and they're like, so think about that. Focus on what really matters. I tell my kids every day, if we are healthy and safe, then we are truly blessed, because with the help of others, we can fix the rest. Right. And that is my saying. Yeah. And so for me, with gratitude, waking up every morning, my eyes open, touch wood, I'm healthy and safe. That is the greatest gift of all. Yeah. And my kids learn that too. So as you can see how important gratitude is for me.
Right. Absolutely.
Start every morning by saying that, and I end every day on what I'm grateful for from the day. And that's how the last thing I open my eyes, I say the health and safety, and I close my eyes on what happened today and the opportunities that I've had today. I've mentioned a few people this morning I was grateful for. So it's hugely profound. That's for sure.
Second time the hair on my neck has stood up and I've gotten goosebumps, Lisa. So thank you for that. So let's talk about leadership then. I would imagine you're an extraordinary leader, but I also would imagine a lot of extraordinary leadership. So to you, what do you define or how do you explain authentic leadership, and how important is it?
It is hugely important, because what I always tell people is this: leadership, whether, if you're a broker, you don't have to be in a position of managing people. You show leadership when you show up to work every day and show your leadership and your strength. But I always tell people is this: play to your authentic self. Don't try because we're all unique in our own beautiful ways. Always try and play to your strengths. So for me, leadership is being authentic, playing to your strength. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. So but you focus on the things that you're good at and play to those strengths. So be authentic is so, so important in leadership. Number two, I would say, is being approachable, being kind, being optimistic as well, because nobody likes people that are always like, well, we're never going to get that deal, or that's not going to happen, or that's going to fall through. Like, no one wants to be around those people, because you know what? Moods and energy are contagious. Mm-hmm. So if you're around people like that all the time, that rubs off you, that negativity, right? So with leadership, you want to be optimistic, you want to be positive. So if something, and here's the other thing, I'll touch quickly about leadership too. The real leaders that I admire, whether they're leading people or just leading their professional life, here's what they do. They focus on the things that they can control, and they let go of the things that they can't. So to me, real strong leadership and professionals. So when something hits me, Gary, personally or professionally, the first thing I say is, okay, can I control or influence this? If the answer is yes, I dive in. If the answer is I cannot control or influence this, okay, what can I learn from it? And then I'm going to let it go. Because all too often I see people, leaders, professionals, focusing on things in their professional life or even their personal life, focusing on things they have no control over, and they dwell and sit in it. If you cannot fix or control something, the most powerful thing you can do are the three words: let it go, and focus your precious energy, because our energy is so precious. Focus your precious energy on the things you can control and move forward. And that's how you get moving forward on all the stuff that happens, and life forces hit us all the time. But it's letting go of those things you can't control by directing that energy to the things you can. And the most successful leaders, Gary, that I see do that. They react to things by, can I control this? Yes or no? All right, I'm going to let it go if I can. And they move on. The last thing I'll say, which is very important, and this is something my mentor shared to me, and I've shared it, and the most successful people in life do this. If you don't have any goals written down, you have to write them down, both personally and professionally. Because here's what I've read a book. There's a book. It was like, I think it was the top 10 intangibles of leadership or something like that, where this professor went and researched all these successful people. And what he found is that the most successful people in life write down their goals, both personally and professionally, but they don't just write them down. They write down short, long, medium, and long-term goals, write them down if they do. The second thing that they do is that in that white space that I talked about, Gary, those successful people use that white space to figure out, they look at those goals, they figure out, what baby step could I do tomorrow that I didn't do today to move forward with that goal?
What action?
If you don't have that white space, you're on that, Ferris wheel. And so you write down those goals. There it is there. Yeah. That's one of the books that I read. Thanks. You're good finding this stuff real fast.
Thanks, David.
And I don't know this guy, by the way, it's not a plug, but anyway, just one of the great books. So write down the goals personally and professionally. Use that white space to figure out what steps could you take tomorrow. So if you're unprofessional with your business right now and you want to achieve X, write it down. Use that quiet time to figure out what could you do tomorrow. Then the third thing most successful people do is they talk about them, let their intentions be known. So share your goals with people. Like, I want to do this. You never know what door will open. And the very last thing successful people do is they visualize their success. So for example, when I was a vice president before I got this job, I visualized myself as president. And what they say is that when you visualize yourself achieving one of those goals, both personally and professionally, it's like having a personal trainer in your mind, because you start moving and acting and thinking as if those things have happened. And it sets you in motion to achieve them. So make sure, for everyone that's listening, make sure you write down your goals personally and professionally. Make sure you talk to people about them. Carve out white space to figure out how you can achieve them, and visualize it happening, because you will surprise yourself how quickly you will achieve some of those goals.
It's amazing in so many ways, Lisa, how similar you and I are. I just did a goal setting seminar a week and a half ago with more than 1,000 people on it. And we have all kinds of people that took that session home to their family and their kids and their office, to finally write it down and put the action steps behind it. The other thing you said that I found really resonated with me, and I'm a firm believer. I've often, said I don't hang with victims, right? Like if you're a Debbie, Downer, Daryl Downer, it's so emotionally taxing, right? To live in that world. It just absolutely drags everything going forward down. So really great to hear that from you. So maybe we got a few more minutes. I know a lot of people would love to know, sort of, you talked about, the first thing you say in the morning, is the gratitude for opening your eyes. But just talk about quickly how you organize your life. Do you on Sundays, do you make a calendar for the next 7 days? Do you make one every single night for what you want to get done?
Yeah.
Do you have your critical tasks that you write down 2 or 3 every day, and then it's sort of laissez-faire? How does Lisa Lisson sort of schedule her week?
Yeah. First of all, Gary, these are great questions. So thank you so much. You're doing a fabulous job, by the way, Gary. But I get asked this a lot. It's like, kind of, how do you do, your job? And then I do a lot of charity work, and then my SickKids boards and raising my kids. And sounds so simple, but I'll tell you this. Sometimes the most simple things in life are so profound if you apply them, if you use consistency. Like all the things I've talked about today about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, this is not rocket science. It's simple things, but sometimes the most simple things are the most powerful if we apply them consistently every day in our lives, like living with gratitude. But something that's very simple, but so powerful is this. I have 2 to-do lists, not joking, on my phone. One is for family, like my kids, and one is for work, okay? And Gary, what I do is every single time that something pops in my head, like if my son will say, "Oh, Mom, on your way home, can you stop and get me some Bristol board? I've got a project." It goes down on that list. Work, if I'm in a meeting, but it's something triggers a thought for another meeting, I write it down. So it goes on this list. And then what I do is that usually every single day every morning I'll take a look at that list, and then broader than that on Sundays or Monday mornings. But I take a look at that list and I say, okay, what absolutely critically has to get done next week and what can wait? Because we can't work on 1,000 things, right? So that simple thing of writing down, I've got the 2 lists, personally and professionally, everything goes on that list. And then usually Sunday night or Monday morning, I'll take a look and go, what has to get done this week? And then those to do things actually get into my calendar. So I'll never forget things. Like if I didn't write down my son with Bristol board, I would get home and I'd be tired. He's like, "Mom, where's my Bristol?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Jack, I totally forgot, So that's what I do. And it sounds so simple, but I would not be functioning at all without a personal and professional list that I write down everything so I never forget. And it helps to manage my life.
Yeah, that's such a great share. Thank you. All right, so the last few minutes, we're going to have a little bit of fun. I have something called the lightning round. And, 30 seconds on each answer, or just a single word is fine too. It's about sort of getting to know you a little better. So happy or content?
Happy.
Talking or texting?
Talking.
A nickname your parents or kids, called you growing up?
For some reason, my 6 brothers nicknamed me Lou.
Lou.
Lou. And in fact, some of my high school friends still call me Lou. So I will answer to Lisa or I will answer to Lou.
Yeah, that's awesome. Secret indulgence?
I would say my secret indulgence is I love chocolate. I'm sorry, I'm a chocoholic. So
yeah.
Especially right now, those Cadbury mini eggs are everywhere for Easter. I can't even go into Shoppers anymore. I'll be in trouble. I got to put my blinders on.
They call your name, do they? I suffer the same
They
thing.
do. Those little chocolate. Oh yeah, I definitely chocolate.
What is a pet peeve for you? What really sort of boils your water?
What a pet peeve for me is this. When I see 2 people talking and one person is not paying attention to the other person, they're looking around. Like, to me, it's that when you're in fact, look at this. This is what I have. I teach everyone this in my office. Okay. It says, be here now. So pet peeve about if someone's coming into your space, you give them your full attention. You look at them in the eyes, but you don't pick up your phone while they're talking to you. Right. So that is my biggest pet peeve, is that when people don't give someone their undivided attention, and listen. My dad always used to say, we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We need to listen twice as much as we speak and listen. So that's a pet peeve when we don't give people the attention that they deserve when they're in front of us.
Before I go to the next on this lightning round, I actually want to expand on that a little bit, because that also really resonated with me. How introspective you were. You said in every position, in every boardroom, as you were learning all the way along, you would go in and you would watch the different personalities and how they would bully their way in, or how they weren't being present and they were just preoccupied with thinking their next thought. And you said, and I watched how it worked for them or didn't work for them, and I took that away and used that in how I carried myself going forward. Can you just quickly go through that?
Absolutely. So like for all your, your brokers that are as a perfect example, like I think it's observing people around you is such a powerful thing, especially if you're observing people that have achieved what you want to achieve. So I would always, when I'm in situations like when I was a vice president and I was invited to attend the president's meetings, I would sit and watch the dynamics of people. There would be one person would come in and he would bang his, and I could see how people reacted. And then he would be the guy that when he'd go to speak, everyone would grab their phone because they didn't want. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So just observing and watching people and their behaviors and then watching how other people react to those behaviors is so powerful. And so I made many notes throughout my career where I would see people, be the bull in the china shop, or I would see people being disrespectful. One of the greatest things you can do as a human being is to ask people, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? But I would see leaders launch right into someone walking in like, hey, can you please go, what was that report? Whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I would make a note to myself, never do that. So if someone walked in my office right now, I would say, hey, first of all, like we're getting a big snowstorm here. And I'm like, hey, like, why are you in the office? You shouldn't be like, just to show that you care. And I watched those caring people do that in my whole career, and the reaction that people felt when the person was caring, which is, I said, I want to make sure that I'm that caring person, leader, to anyone, to my friends, my family, and to listen and ask people how they're doing. And so, but I got all of that from really watching and observing the kind, nice people, and watch what happens to those people that weren't kind and nice and made it all about themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
we know those people.
Explain so articulately too, which is just wonderful. Your favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday. Yeah. So I love going down to the Caribbean actually. So my mom's best friend lives in Antigua. Yeah. So we go down there a lot. And my other nickname is Strawberry. So because I've been going down to Antigua since I was 5, I know a lot of the locals are like family to me. And they call me Strawberry. So I take my mom and her best friend, her birthdays are 3 days apart. So I always take my mom down there and have a celebration down there.
That's
so
wonderful.
That's like second home to me.
That's wonderful. And your favorite cocktail?
I would probably say I like my wine. I'm a wine girl. Yeah, I like red and white wine. I'm not a big into the fruity drinks, but I like a nice glass of wine for sure.
Beautiful. Favorite music?
Favorite music, you know what? I would say that growing up, my mom used to always play Fleetwood Mac. I'm going to date but it's the Rumors album, and and it just brings back really good memories with my mom, like when she had left my dad, and that's a little story. But she would always play Fleetwood Mac and that Rumors album, and I'd love to listen to them. And I would say the second one, real fast, is Led Zeppelin, because my husband and I met to Led Zeppelin. He was a huge Led Zeppelin fan. So at his funeral, when our celebration of life, I had a whole bunch of Led Zeppelin songs, like one's Ramble On, cranked at the funeral home, and it's not very traditional. So I would say those two: the Fleetwood Mac from my mom's memory, and then Led Zeppelin from my husband's memory.
That's awesome. That's incredible. What goal are you still trying to achieve?
I would say a couple things. So what's on my list for goals is that I want to actually get on a corporate board, Gary, because I'm a lot of nonprofit boards. Yeah. And so one of the goals that's on my list is I want to get on a corporate board. And in fact, so what baby step did I take? I reached out to several of people in my network, and I let my intentions be known. And I told them I really would like to get on a corporate board this year. And I put it out there, and I'm starting to get some calls now. So that's definitely on my list from a professional perspective. I would say from a personal perspective, I want to get back more into yoga and more things like that. Like I've let it slide a bit, so that's also on my list to try and get back into doing a bit more physical health things. So I'm making a commitment to do that. So those are the two things personally and kind of professionally that I'm making a conscious effort to do more. Now that gyms have opened up too here, which is nice, getting back out there and getting back into it, because COVID with these lockdowns, you kind of let that stuff slide. So that's something I really want to get back on track with.
Interesting. Well, good luck with the yoga. I told the story just recently, but at 53 years old last year, I woke up and I was so incredibly stiff, and I started doing yoga every second day, and I've been doing it for just over a year now, just past the 12
yeah.
months. And
I want to get back into it.
It has changed my life, Lisa, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, just in my mobility, it's night and day. It's such a.
Well, you know what? I'm sure your whole audience was, but you know what? 30 minutes of exercise every day reduces your stress level. It helps you. Like, I'm trying to get back into going for walks and things like that. We can always find 30 minutes to go for a walk. Yeah. It's so important that we do that. So that's definitely on my list for this year, for sure.
And the very last question for us, and we'll wind this up, and you've already answered it. So I think to some degree, but what are you most grateful for?
I would say I am most grateful, honestly, for my children and how they have just turned out so well, despite, my older, like they were 9, 7, 5, and 3 when Patrick passed away. So my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old barely remember him. And I'm just so proud of them for how they have figured out how to strengthen their resilience muscle, and for the great human beings that they've turned into, and that they actually listen to their moms. So they are kind, they are nice, they live with gratitude. So I'm just so proud of the beautiful human beings that they've turned into, despite, being raised by a mom and really having no dad or man present in their lives. They've turned out pretty incredible, and I'm so grateful for them every single day.
Well, let me tell you what we're grateful for, Lisa. We are grateful for having you on this call. I mean, there is, I don't know, hundreds of comments that have come through that we have in the comment chat. You are just an absolute, I don't know that I know a finer example of a leader, but a leader who has, had to get there just through sheer determination and resilience, as you call your book. It has been just a real pleasure to sit down with you and have you on the program today. Just before I say goodbye to all of you guys, make any comments, tag Lisa online, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. LinkedIn. We're going to send at least 50 of her books out. Maybe we'll have her back again someday. She was absolutely amazing. Also, I want to put the date for our next guest. Our next guest is Trevor Linden. Trevor was obviously the president and general manager of the Vancouver Canucks. He was a beloved fan favorite in British Columbia with the Vancouver Canucks throughout his career. He's a friend of mine and just an extraordinary individual. So look for that on Thursday, March 10th, same time, 11 a.m. And lastly, I want to thank our sponsors, First National. First National has been part of this program since day one. They're an extraordinary company. They're very, very good to us, and they are some of the best at what they do in the Canadian mortgage finance. So to my pals at First Nat, to Scotty, to Stephen, to Jason, thank you very much for being so great of a partner. And with that, guys, we're going to sign off. Lisa, thank you very, very much to all of you listening, tuning in today. I appreciate all of your time, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.